Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Advisor with Stacey Chillemi. And today I'm very excited because we have a very special guest today on our show. His name is Dennis Carroll, and he is a licensed hypnosist, and he helps people with anxiety and depression. And today he's going to go over some different ways that people who are suffering from depression or anxiety can help themselves naturally without resorting to the possibility of usage of medications. And he's going to give you some tools and techniques to help you along the way so you could help yourself and improve your overall life. So, Dennis, it is a pleasure to have you on the show today. I'm really excited to talk about this. So many people in the United States suffer from anxiety and depression, and so many people are on medications also. And, it's very hard sometimes to, teach people that there are other ways, there's other possibilities, that could help people overcome depression and anxiety without having to resort to medications and the side effects that come along with these medications. So I'd love to hear more about it, and I'd love to hear more about you. So maybe you could tell us a little about yourself first.
I'd love to. And first off, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be on here. And I love talking about what I do because it's something I'm very, very passionate about. It was life altering for me personally in 2009 when the same type of a program that I now offer to other people. I went through it and it ended a 31-year long battle with severe chronic depression for me. And it was just mind boggling how quickly it just turned around for me. And when that happened, I knew that I had been given a gift and I knew that I wanted to develop that gift and to pay it forward. So, and now I've learned how to get not only help people get over depression, but also anxiety as well. And it's really not even that hard. It's just a different approach towards mental health and teaching people how to use their brains differently and the energy that we move in and out of each day. One of the things that I discovered was that anxiety and depression only happen when someone goes into their feminine energy. It's not the masculine type of thing because masculine energy takes big problems and dismisses them. Says, don't worry about it. No big deal, right?
Yes.
But that feminine energy will take a small problem and exacerbate it and blow that problem up. And oftentimes just in order to connect, to talk about things. So anxiety takes a small worry and blows it out of proportion. And then people
Wow.
in their head, right, will say, what if something bad happens? What if insert whatever problem you want at the end of that what if question? And then people often will run a movie fulfilling that what if question in their head and then loop the movie and run it over and over and over. And it feels like the anxiety has control over them. But
Yes.
in reality, they're the one playing the movie.
Hmm.
They're the one asking the what if question. Right.
Yeah.
And so they're the ones actually creating the anxiety. And the reason they do it is because in the subconscious, we have needs that have to get met, like our needs for life, air, food, water, and sleep, right? Our physical needs. Well, there's six subconscious emotional needs, and four of those needs are primary needs, meaning they have to get met. Now, if you don't have a better way to get those needs met than to feel anxious or depressed, you're going to feel anxious and depressed until you find a new way to get those needs met. So that's one of the things I like to teach people how to get their needs met in more healthy, fulfilling ways, in ways that allow them to grow as a human being and even give back to society, because that's where we really all find our fulfillment, right? Is
Yeah.
giving back in some way that's meaningful for us. So it's exciting to do it because I actually get to see people transform in front of me by using hypnosis. And I can teach you all the different tools, and I'm happy to share some of them here today. And
Yeah.
one of them is obviously to shift when you first start to feel anxious, is to shift into your masculine side, right? And as soon as you do that, the anxiety will go away. I do teach this, and people come and say, "Well, sometimes it doesn't work," and I say, "Well, that's because you didn't catch it in time. You're already deep into the pattern emotionally." And when someone's already deep there, shifting at that space isn't going to bring them out. So I teach people to quickly shift. The moment they begin to go down that pattern of what if something bad happens,
Yeah.
stop. Say, I got this. It's going to be okay. But do it with emotional intensity so you can shift your energies. And it's a simple, simple tool, and it works really well. Um, and all these tools that I'd be happy to share all this stuff. I will say that without the hypnosis, I find that for most people, it doesn't last. It's
Oh,
not sustainable. So the masculine energy shift that I teach, we usually work for about a month to 3 months before people slide back to their old stuff.
oh,
So
really?
hypnosis is where you get the big bang, big transformations, where it changes how people feel. And mostly it's about how they feel about themselves. Most people get anxious because they're afraid they're going to be judged, and they're worried about their own value as a human being. And they're fearing that if they're judged, then that people will not love them. And they feel like they're not good enough on the inside. And that's really where the crux of my work comes in, is to teach people their own value, to teach people to truly love themselves. And you think that would be easy, but it's not for most people.
Yeah.
We're really good at finding what's wrong with ourselves and looking in the mirror
Right.
and picking out all our flaws.
Yeah.
And very, very few people walk around patting themselves on the back saying what a great person they are and how wonderful they are, right? But many, many people, if I say to somebody, do you beat yourself up? Oh yeah, of course, everybody does. They assume that everybody does. And I was a master of that too, Stacey. When I suffered from depression, I used to beat myself up every single day, multiple times a day, over things that no one else on the planet was thinking about. But I
Right.
was thinking of something stupid I did in the past, and I say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. You're such an idiot," and you call myself a moron, and that just made me feel worse and worse about myself. And that's where really that drove the depression, the
Yeah.
feelings of inadequacy.
Right.
I mean, when I was able to overcome those feelings through hypnosis, my confidence went from like a 0 on a scale 1 to 10 to an 8, like overnight. My fulfillment and happiness, it all manifested literally overnight. And it was just a like mind boggling different. And that's when I knew that I wanted to learn how to do this to pay it forward, because it was just such a gift. So now I'm fortunate that this is what I get to do for a living, and
I
it's
love
not work for me, right? I get to do it every day and practice something that I really, really love and to help people at the same time. It's just been a gift.
That's wonderful. Now,
Yeah,
how is it that if you can figure out that you're in your feminine masculinity and you switch over to your masculine energy, how
right.
come if you don't use hypnosis, it only will last short term?
So it's the strongest force in our experience as human beings is our need to remain consistent with who we see ourselves to be in our subconscious,
Yeah.
which would you could call it your subconscious identity, right?
Mhm.
Most people's conscious and subconscious, or at least let me restate that. Most people that I see in my practice, they have an incongruency between their conscious and subconscious identity. They
Okay.
might think they're good enough, but they feel like they're not. And
Right.
when you think one thing, that's conscious. When you feel something, that's subconscious. Our feelings come out of subconscious. So
Yes.
specifically for me, I always felt like I was not enough.
Right.
And that doesn't make any sense to me anymore, but I believed it back then, and I felt it as well. So it was not only a thought in my head, but it was a feeling in my gut. And I
Yeah.
knew it was right in my stomach. Like I knew exactly where the feeling was. And a
Yeah.
lot of people have that feeling or a similar feeling that tells them they're inadequate in some way. And over the almost 15 years of doing this now, I've heard dozens of different ways that people say it about themselves. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I can't do enough. I don't belong. I don't fit in. I'm not, just, I'm not enough, basically. Right.
Right.
And that's really where I do the work, where the hypnosis changes the feelings in the subconscious. And then it makes those changes sustainable.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yes.
Yeah, because those feelings will always pull you back. I remember when I first went through this program myself, I was doing a writing assignment. And I literally had done it in the late 90s. I mean, the early 90s. So it's like 2009 now. 20 some years later, I'm doing the same homework. And I didn't get any change out of it the first time I did it. And I spent 20 years feeling depressed, right?
Mhm.
So now I'm doing this writing assignment again, and I know I'm doing it again. And so I really, really went hard on it. I wrote and I wrote and I wrote in the book. And I continued writing and continued writing until finally I got that it was a story, this story that I was telling myself that I was not enough. It was stupid.
Yeah.
And how can one person not be enough and another person be enough? And I just conceptually, intellectually got that it was a story. So I had this transformation intellectually, but I still had this very strong feeling in my gut. And the
Right.
feeling was still telling me that I was not enough.
Mhm.
So I got it in last and I knew that I was going to change or I was going to die trying because living the way I had been living was costing me everything that was important to me in life. And that if I didn't change, I was going to go to my grave lonely, unfulfilled, and unhappy.
Right.
So I knew I was going to change. I was going to die trying, but I knew it also was going to feel like I was swimming upstream
Right.
and it was going to be a battle.
Yeah.
And so it was coincidentally, well, I don't really think it was a coincidence, but it was at that point in time that my coach did hypnosis on me. And that's when it changed. Everything changed literally overnight. And it was amazing. Yeah. And I think that answered your question.
Yes.
And
And
why people can't sustain it? Yeah.
when you do hypnosis, is it bringing you to a relaxed state where you can really connect with yourself and connect with the emotions and the things that are holding you back and then work on a healing process? Is that how it works?
It's actually, you have to get your thought process in line first, right?
Okay.
So if I do hypnosis on someone, but they're still beating themselves up in their head,
Yeah, yeah.
they're not going to feel the effects of the hypnosis. And I
Okay.
tell people what normally happens when I do hypnosis is when I bring someone out, they'll either open their eyes and kind of look around the room nervously saying, I'm not sure I did that right because it doesn't feel like you're hypnotized.
Yeah.
Or they'll open their eyes and they'll blink really heavily because they were deeper than they thought. Either way, it doesn't feel like you're in a trance. So
Okay.
it's really like you just have your eyes closed and I'm talking to you essentially. And
Yes.
it's very specialized hypnosis developed by a man named Dr. Richard Bandler, who is the co-creator and co-founder of neuro-linguistic programming, which my primary license is in NLP.
Hmm.
And for those of people who are listening who know Tony Robbins, that's how Tony got famous. They studied with a guy who worked under Tony and then studied with the guy who taught Tony. And it's kind of hard to explain the hypnosis itself because there typically three different types that I do with people, but the primary one that really has seemed to have had the most effect for most of my clients is getting rid of the feelings of inadequacy,
Hmm.
getting rid of those feelings that they're not good enough or they're not enough or however it is that they tell them that. And that really is transformational. Excuse me. But to explain how it's done, it's literally my coach did it to me. I don't want to bore people to death here, but he had me put a memory into my hand. He made me think of a memory that like a memory of a time I felt love, and then put that memory into my hand and let my subconscious give it a shape and a color. Then he also had me put this feeling in my other hand, let my subconscious give it a shape and a color, and the feelings of inadequacy manifested in the form of a coffin in my hand, in my mind's eye.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what he had me do is pour the picture of love into the coffin until they both looked like the picture of love. And then integrate it, make it into one and place it in my body. And that's literally what changed me.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it was amazing. And honestly, I didn't realize he had did hypnosis with me because I was standing when we did it.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and I thought it was this quote unquote NLP technique. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was hypnosis until like 5 months later when I was studying what we had done and realized, I thought, oh, that was hypnosis. Oh, okay. So and that's why I got into it.
Wow. Now, when
Mhm.
it comes to like when you're, let's say we talk about anxiety and you talk about depression and you talk especially anxiety when you start to worry a lot and you're in your feminine energy and then you have to learn how to switch into your masculine energy so you could throw it over. Now, it sounds easier than said. I know for me many times like I fall into that feminine energy and then it'll rattle in my brain over and over again. And then sometimes I'll even think about the future that hasn't even occurred yet. And I'll think about what possibly could be happening in the future. And then I see myself overworking myself with unnecessary negative emotions that didn't even have to be there if I just trained myself to deal with it in a different way. So how does someone, learn how to, man or woman, take that feminine energy and switch it to masculine energy? Because sometimes I'll see my husband, he'll throw things right over his shoulder. I'm like, how could you just do that? And it just like flabbergasts me.
Yeah. It's important to have both the feminine and the masculine side, right? Because our feminine energy is where we connect. And
Yes.
that's so important, right? And without that, we just want to have the same intensity of relationships that we have that are so fulfilling for us. So it's important that's to maintain the energy, but I think it's important to have a balance of both energies, of the
Mhm.
masculine energy, which is where we go and get stuff done, the feminine energy to connect. Um, the simple technique I use to teach people it, and I'm going to delete the expletive because this is a family show, but I tell people just whenever they start thinking about with the anxiety, just say F that to themselves without deleting the word.
Right.
That I got this. Those are two very masculine statements. And if you say that with emotional intensity, the shift happens immediately. Now, if
Wow.
you're like I said, if you're already deep into a pattern, you try to make that shift, like you're already deep into your feminine energy and you're really like maybe really feeling overly anxious at that point in time, it's not going to pull you out.
Yeah.
But it really works at the beginning of those patterns, and it works really well.
I
And
love
the other
that.
thing is, I tell, yeah, the other thing is, we all worry about this stuff, right? And one of the things I say, well, what if everything works out for me?
Hmm.
Right? What if everything's okay? Like that's a much better question than asking, I mean, we have to look for problems. We have to anticipate things going wrong and be prepared for stuff that happens. But one of the things I said to my wife is everything always works out for us.
Hmm.
In the end, it does, right?
It
It's the way to
does.
think about it. Everything always works out one way or
Yeah.
another. And all this time we spend worrying and feeling anxious and concerned over that stuff, it could be spent, connecting,
Yeah.
feeling good, being happy. And I think there's no real downside to being happy and connecting. There's no downside to laughing.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess just more enjoyable than feeling anxious. And personally, anxiety was never a big issue for me. Depression was
Yeah.
my big issue. But once I got over depression and I learned how to help other people do the same, I just noticed that a lot of people that were suffering from depression were also suffering from anxiety. So I was fortunate enough to be able to study with the guy who taught Tony Robbins, and he taught me a lot of this. He's a brilliant genius, way
Hmm.
beyond whatever I'd ever be able to measure up to, but he's what I'm shooting for. And
I
he's
love it.
a high mark to shoot for.
Yeah. I
Uh,
love Tony Robbins. He's amazing.
yeah, yeah, he is. Excuse me. So shifting, the questions you ask yourself, what if everything works out? Or, if you don't change the movie in your head, the movie of running the problem, the one that creates the anxiety, if you just change the question, but don't change the movie, it's not going to change the outcome. You're still going to feel anxious. So you
Yeah.
have to change a new movie of everything working out and run that movie in your head.
Right.
Um, Combine that with the masculine energy, and it's really, it's a great fix for anxiety in the, like I said, in the short term. If you're unable to overcome feelings of inadequacy, it's ultimately going to come back though. At
Yeah.
least that's been my experience for over a decade now.
And how do you prevent having those feelings come back? Is it continuously, practiced in hypnosis or practicing the techniques or, how do you prevent yourself from falling back into that hole?
Yeah, so there's no standing still in life, right? You're either
Yeah.
going forward or you're going backwards.
Right.
And so what I do is I set my clients up to live congruently with their core values. So part
Hmm.
of my program is to help them understand what they value at their core. What's the things that are most important to them? A lot of people don't realize what's important to them.
Yeah.
And we create what's called a vision statement.
Hmm.
Each client writes out their own vision statement. It's 3 to 5 sentences of who they are and who they are becoming.
Yeah.
And living congruently with the vision statement will cause them to grow as a human being and will allow them to give back in some way that's meaningful for so they're instructed, and most of them will do this, to memorize their own vision statement.
Hmm.
And so then, because the engagement with me is very short, I only offer 8 sessions in my program from start to finish. So at the end of those 8 sessions, life is still coming at you, right? It's
Yeah.
still going to pull you this way. It's still going to pull you that way. So you want to have the tools to keep yourself on track once you're, out on your own. Like the kind of work I do, I don't want them to be dependent on me. I want to
Yes.
empower you to be able to go out and live your life and be fulfilled and happy. So they have to memorize their vision statement, and then anytime they notice they're not, feeling as I call the new norm, like in a scale of 1 to 10, like a 9 or a 10, feeling really, really good. Life
Yeah.
pulls you off track. Rather than worrying about what has you off track, they just say their vision statement to themselves and get themselves right back on track. And I could share my with you just to give you an idea if you'd like to hear it.
Oh yeah.
Um, okay. So mine is I, Dennis Carroll, see, hear, feel, and know. The adventure that is my life is meant to be an example to all. I exude joy and peace as I consistently allow what is to be okay. I glorify God by loving unconditionally. I lead, teach, and inspire all who want my help. I am a celebration of life and love.
I love that. I
And
love
all my clients have their own. And mine's not even the best one. I have like literally a file in my office. I have 7 pages of actual vision statements that people will take and use them as a template.
yeah.
And then I help people because of my training, the linguistic part of it. I make sure that it's on point linguistically, and then they memorize it, and it keeps them on track for probably 10 years. A good vision statement. You'll outgrow it after a time and have to rewrite one, but 10 years is a good run.
Oh
Right?
yeah. Yeah, for
So that's
sure.
how they keep. That's how I keep them on track. Because once the hypnosis is done, if they don't continue to grow, they will start to go back. Comfort zone. It's like gravity. It's
Hmm.
always working on us, always pulling us back in. And facing growth is not comfortable.
Yeah.
So we have to really truly. I've always heard it, but it's a long time before I understood it. Getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You're only going to grow when you're uncomfortable, and if you're not growing, then you're going to go back. You know.
Right. 100%. Oh my goodness, yes. And when it comes to depression, that is something that so many people struggle with, and it's very hard for people to snap out of depression. A lot of people resort to medications. A lot of people have a hard time, coping with depression. And with depression, a lot of people feel anxiety. The two kind of go hand in hand for many. You know, how does a person, without having to resort to medication, like what are some great ways for someone to cope with depression and get themselves out of that hole? Because it's kind of like, you dig your grave, and if you when you feel really in a sense of deep depression, it's like falling into that grave, and you can climb eventually out if you try hard enough, but you have to catch yourself before you fall all the way in. And how do you, catch yourself, and how are you able to turn the tables around so you could overcome that depression?
So at any given time, we can focus on whatever is in front of us, right? And there's a lot of visual stimulation, a lot of auditory stimulation. We're always feeling things. And I used to really focus on everything that was wrong. I
Mm.
focused on, losing my hair. I wasn't married. I didn't have the job I wanted. I did like all these things that were going wrong. I tell everyone the same thing these days. I said, if you want to look for what's wrong with you, you're going to find it. There's
Yeah,
something wrong with all of us, right? But that's part of being human. There's
yes,
also something right with all of us, right? And it's really learning who you really are at your core and appreciating that,
yeah,
right? And you can look around and there's something right now that you can appreciate going on in your life. If you're still breathing and you're
hmm,
walking around, there's something you can appreciate. And it's a little bit different than gratitude. I do like to, keep a gratitude journal, but I feel like appreciation for me is more present in the moment. Like
yeah,
when I'm appreciating something, I have to be aware of what it is. I can be
right,
grateful for things that have happened in the past, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can only feel one emotion at a time.
right,
Now, if you're feeling appreciation, you're
hmm,
not feeling depression.
right,
Right? And now I used to get angry. Anger was a big part of my problem. I'd get angry and then depressed. So I'd go back and forth between those two.
right,
And it was interesting because we talked about the masculine, feminine side. The anger was my masculine side.
yeah,
And after a while, I remember I used to drive home from work, and I lived alone, and I didn't want to be single at the time. And I would get angry. I'd drive past these houses with their uplighting, and I have a story in my head about these people having the perfect life. And I would get mad that I didn't have that. And I would pull into my driveway and I'd get out of my car. And unbeknownst to me, by changing my physiology, I stopped the car, got up, and walked. I interrupted that anger. So emotion and emotion are
hmm,
very similar, right? So
yes,
I'm moving my body and I end up still thinking about all the same things, but now instead of getting angry, I start to get sad. So now I'm moving into my feminine energy.
Yes.
And then I'd get more and more sad until I got myself depressed, thinking about the same exact topic. First I was angry, then I was depressed. And I would go back and forth between those two. Not a great place to live. But
Yeah.
changing your body, right? Moving your body can help to interrupt the depression or any emotion. And the more radical the physiological shift, the more it will shift the emotional state. And then focusing on what's right, being appreciative of something in that present moment. And even if you were just to put your hands over your heart and you feel your heartbeat,
Yeah.
you have a purpose. There's a reason you're here,
Yes.
right? And looking for that. So I always thought that when I got more money, then I would be happy. It was
Hmm.
or once I got married, then I would be happier. Once this happened, then I'd be happy. What I realized is I had to get happy first
Yeah.
before I could manifest those things.
Yes.
And so it's not, I think a lot of people have this mindset that once this happens, then I'll be happy. And that's like walking to the horizon to try to get to the horizon. And every step you take, it just moves a little further away. So
Right.
you really have to switch around your mindset and be happy and appreciative of what's right in your life right now and focus on it. And the
Yes.
more you focus on that, there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. It's a real part of your brain that's always looking for something to focus on in the subconscious. By focusing on what's right, you begin to retrain that part of your brain. So then you're less and less likely to get depressed.
Right.
And by saying nice things to yourself about yourself, like we do affirmations, right?
Hmm.
So I think one of the really, really simple things to do, we talked about how people beat themselves up constantly, but are hardly, rarely are they nice to themselves. Write out a list of things that you believe are true about yourself, things that are positive, and start to say those things to yourself instead of calling yourself an idiot or moron, like I would do, right? Now, the one thing I did find about with affirmations that if you don't believe the affirmations, they don't work.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people say, "Well, I'm getting there." If you're not getting anywhere,
Yeah.
you want to tell yourself that, right? So
Yeah.
my affirmation, when I changed my mindset in 2009, my affirmation was really, really simple. It's just, I am a really good guy. I would say that to myself. I'm a really good guy. Now
Yeah.
that's a real simple statement, but it has a lot of
Right.
deep meaning for me. But you know what? By saying that to myself, it didn't make me feel less than. It
Right.
didn't make me feel insignificant. It didn't make me get depressed.
Yeah.
Right? It's shifting what not only what you think about, what you talk about, what you say to yourself is hugely, hugely important.
Right.
Your internal dialogue is everything. And if you're going to
Yeah.
be critical of yourself habitually, you're going to feel bad. And
Right.
things like depression and anxiety are going to be part of your life. So you really simple, simple, simple. Create one affirmation that you believe is true and use that to shut down any negative self-talk.
Right.
Every time you say something negative to yourself, shut it down with your affirmation. And that could be in the form of calling yourself names or shoulding on yourself.
Hmm.
Like people should all over themselves, right? I should go to the gym. I should eat better. I should do this. I should do that. And then when they don't follow through on those things, they make themselves feel bad about themselves.
Right.
It's another way. It's another way of being negative to themselves. So
Yeah.
that's another opportunity to use an affirmation or something that changes the state in the present moment. Excuse me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Now you do this in 8 sessions. So in the 8 sessions, what are some of the things you focus on each session to get them to the point where they are struggling with either anxiety or depression, and by the eighth session, they are on a new track, a new pathway to live in a more happy and productive life?
So we just touched on the it's a 7-step strategic intervention coaching program, and one of the steps is to create the frame of possibility. So a lot of people don't even think it's possible to get over anxiety and depression in 8 sessions. Well, it really only takes 4 sessions, and it's 4 more sessions to make it sustainable. Right.
Okay.
But one of the first things they find out is how are they making themselves wrong? What are you doing in your head to make yourself feel bad?
Yeah.
And so a pull, like we just talked about, shooting on themselves, calling themselves names, whatever it is, whatever way they're doing it. Because you're either reinforcing your faith or you're reinforcing your fear.
Right.
Right? So I have to figure out where they are with that. So the first thing we do is dive into their internal dialogue, find out what the habitual things they're saying, give them the tools to change them. Like I said, affirmations is one of the tools we use.
Yeah.
Affirmations also then retrains the reticular activating system, which we were just talking about a moment
Right.
ago. Begin focusing more and more on what's positive. Then they have to dive into, like, you have to get leverage to change, leverage over yourself. I
Yes.
mentioned earlier I was doing a homework assignment that I'd done 20 years in the past. That's part of my program. It's a writing assignment. Like, what are you missing out on by living the way you're living in all areas of your life? What
Right.
have you missed out on in the past? What are
Hmm.
you missing out on now? What will you miss out on if you don't change?
Yes.
And that's a writing assignment that I give them that is for their eyes only because I don't want to see it. I want them to be so brutally honest with themselves
Hmm.
that they can move forward that they wouldn't ever want to show it to me. So I
Right.
don't ever read that. I have them burn it or shred it, do whatever they want with it when it's done. But that helps them to reframe these staying stuck, right? It's staying and continuing to believe that they're inadequate in some way.
Hmm.
Next, I follow that up with hypnosis that changes the feelings in the subconscious.
Hmm.
That's usually like the third, maybe the fourth session, depending on where we're at. And then it's a matter of finding out what else they need. Like, so it's a customizable program. If it's anxiety, it's that's an additional hypnosis would probably come in the fourth session.
Hmm.
Then we'll do a core values hierarchy. Go identify the hierarchy of their core values, and then take a look at their values rules. What's really, really interesting is we are the author of our own rules of what has to happen in order for us to achieve our values.
Right.
So, what I mean by that is love is my top core value. If I could only have one thing in my life to make me happy, it would be love.
Right.
But in the past, I had made it very hard for me to feel love consistently.
Hmm.
So I had rules of four different things that had to happen. In order for me to know that you love me, you would have to tell me you love me and show me you love me.
Right.
And every once in a while, these are all and rules. I needed all these. Every once in a while, do something thoughtful for me, so I knew you were thinking about me.
Yes.
And you had to have my back.
Hmm.
Now, all four of those things were in somebody else's power.
Right.
I was dependent on someone else to do those four things for me in order for me to feel love. So it was very hard for me to consistently feel love.
Yes.
So I will take a look at the person's core value rules and oftentimes rewrite those rules.
Yes.
My current rules for love are all in my power and they're all oral.
Hmm.
So now I feel love anytime I think of October 20th of 2009, or anytime I think about my mother, or anytime I think of my wife. And there's all these things that I can do now of my own accord easily and consistently, and I can feel love all throughout the day. So now instead of going out into the world to want to get love,
Yeah.
I go out into the world and I want to give love because
Right.
I have it already inside of me. And
Yes.
that's the paradigm shift that changes everything.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things we work on in the program. Because when you go out in the world to give instead of get, your entire world just gets better and better.
Yes.
And so we take all those core values finally and we'll put them into a vision statement.
Hmm.
And then they memorize their vision statement to keep themselves on track. And then there's another round of hypnosis just to figure out what the subconscious wants to work on. So I
Right.
literally let their subconscious pick something to work on. And I take them on a guided journey while their subconscious is working because they don't need their conscious brain to help with this.
Yes.
And what basically it's called an arm catalepsy hypnosis. If I do it in person, I will take their arm and raise it up and tell them I'm not going to tell them to put it down. And while they're in trance, their arm will dangle in the air like it's hanging from a rope, right? Just and the hand comes down to the chair and I'll bring them out of trance. And at that point, they can decide whether or not they want to share with me what they learned. Because oftentimes the subconscious will reveal something to them that is very personal. And
Hmm.
so really about 50% of the people share that with me and about 50% don't. And I
Right.
always say, I don't care if you share or not. All I care about is that you got something useful out of it.
Yes.
And that's like, that's a 10,000 foot flyover of what happens in those 8 sessions. But it's very powerful and it's consistent. As long as people do what I ask them to do, they get the same results. And doing it for 14, almost 15 years now. It's been very, very consistent with the outcome.
Wow. I love that. That's amazing. That
And the
is.
best part is that first session's 100% complimentary. So if somebody really wants to see if it's for them, there's no charge or obligation. So they can always do it. And they can do it over Zoom. I have coached people all over the world at this point. Farthest away to Hawaii and Japan. And I'm not sure how those people found me, but they did. And it's
I love
amazing
it.
that you can do hypnosis over Zoom.
Yeah, it's people just have to be in tune with the person they're working with. And a lot of people, they coach and they teach all different types of things, including hypnosis. And as long as you are in tune with that person and there is good communication, anything is possible. Because when you're talking through Zoom, you kind of feel like the person's there in a sense because they are so, close to you in a sense, even though they're far away. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
but if you had to take today's conversation and you really wanted to emphasize on some important factors, what type of takeaways would you like to give the audience today?
Be kind to yourself. Focus on what's right with you. There's something wrong with all of us. That's part
Yeah.
of being human. Let
Hmm.
it go. Just let
Right.
it go. There's just too much negativity in the world.
Yes.
And you are all you're listening to me right now. You are all enough. You are good enough. You're worthy of love. That's the takeaway.
I
Right?
love that. I love that. Now, can you tell everybody about the services that you provide?
Yeah, I offer an 8 session program that is designed to cause transformation and eliminate anxiety and depression from their lives. And it should leave them happy and fulfilled, confident on a scale of 1 to 10 at like a 9. And we make that sustainable in the program. And like I said, the first session is complimentary. And I even offer a money back guarantee because it's not about the money for me. And
Yeah.
obviously, I have to earn a living like we all do, but I don't do this for the money. Money has never been my driver here. I
Yeah.
really am gifted that I get to help people in this way. It's really
Oh,
been a blessing. It really has.
I love that. I love that. And where can people find you?
I am in Westchester and find me online at westchesterpalifecoach.com. And I'm all over social media. Dennis Carroll, an NLP practitioner, should be able to find me pretty easy. Google me. Um, I'll be like literally my name and the words life coach or my name, whatever else comes up, and I'll be the entire first page of Google. Bunch of different websites.
I love it. Well, Dennis, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I just got so much knowledge from you today, and I'm so glad you pointed out so many of these different ways that you could help people because in today's world, so many people struggle with anxiety and depression. And I'm so glad there are people like you who are showing people natural, more sustainable ways to overcome anxiety and depression and how they can overcome it and stay happy and healthy for the remaining parts of their lives, as long as they follow through and do the things that you had mentioned. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed my time today.
Oh, thank you. You have a great day.
You too. Thanks.